what's the use of two strong legs if you only run away? And what use is the finest voice when you have nothing good to say? What good is strength and muscle if you only push and shove? And what's the use of two good ears when you can't hear those you love? It's not just what you're born with, it's what you choose to bear. And it's not how big your share is, but how much you can share. And it's not the fights you dreamed of, but those you really fought. It's not what you've been given, it's what you do with what you've got. Yeah, it's not just what you're born with, it's what you choose to bear. And it's not how big your share is, but how much you can share. And it's not the fights you dreamed of, but those you really fought. It's not what you've been given, it's what you do with what you've got.
Hi, friends. Welcome back to Seeds of Revolution. Today, we are speaking to Liz Cronin. Liz is a member of the organizing committee of the Victoria Transit Riders Union. And Liz is going to talk to us all about their campaign to make transit free and available to everybody in Victoria, which I think is a really wonderful, wonderful goal. So welcome to Seeds of Revolution, Liz.
Hi, thanks so much for having me. Excited to be here.
Thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate you taking the time to speak to us. Maybe we could start out by you talking to us about a little bit about your background and how you became involved in the Transit Riders Union and why that has become such a primary focus of your attention and your activism.
Yeah, for sure. Um, just really quick, I should mention too, our goals are somewhat centered on the Victoria Transit system, but we realize because of how things are administered, we would kind of need fares to be eliminated in all of BC and certain things to be changed in transit in the whole province. So that's where a lot of our advocacy ends up going as well. Yeah, I'm a social worker. There's a joke within the Transit Riders Union that we should have some kind of drinking game about, like, how often I bring up the fact that I'm a social worker in media interviews and other times. But it really does inform a lot of, like, why I got into this work. I think each member of the group has had a different way in, a different way that they've kind of seen how society is not serving people, whether it's from their own perspective or their family. We've got folks with disabilities. We've got people who have family members who are transit operators. Coming from that perspective. Um, yeah, for me, I've spent time as an outreach worker. I've spent time as a shelter worker in the downtown in Victoria, and yeah, just became increasingly disgusted and concerned with how our society is run and how violent it is. And yeah, through that time, I've just been so interested in the opportunities we have to make a pretty simple change that would make a huge difference to how our society operates. There are actually a bunch of them. Like, one of the things that infuriates me when I hear politicians talk about social issues is when they say that things are very complex, because a lot of the time, like, they're not that complex.
I actually think that when you hear a politician say something is very complex, chances are 99 out of 100, it's actually very simple.
Yeah, it's
And it
really
and the
yeah,
simple solution is spend money on the problem.
prioritize the people and
Yeah.
and actually have the moral courage to capture the money from the wealthy people, the wealthy corporations, and run society, which is what your job is. So I'm pretty much done with putting up with excuses and bullshit around policy. And yeah, I was lucky enough to be thinking a lot about transit and how amazing it would be if transit had the fares eliminated and was fully funded just through fair and just taxation systems. At the same time as some other folks were thinking about that and getting organized. So our chair started the organization, and then we ended up in the same spaces pretty soon after that, and we were able to get connected, and it just came together really, really beautifully. We have our chair, Christina Clemente. She's like very passionate about this. And I believe she's like the original founding member with a couple of her friends. And it's been an evolving group of people since then. But, yeah, I think, and and if we go back further for why I was interested in social work in the first place and why I'm kind of thinking about society and stuff, like many people who are in these kinds of spaces, I have family members who were completely not being served by how society was run. So I'm a white person, but I have indigenous family members in my close family circle, and people with disabilities and people who are treated as disposable by the system. And so it started very young for me, that feeling like this is not right, like that something needs to be very different about this. Yeah.
Why did you decide to focus on transit? Not that there's anything wrong with that, not at all. But I'm curious, with your background as a social worker and as a support worker downtown and in various needy communities, unfortunately, there's so many needs that people have: housing, healthcare. What was it about transit that really spoke to you?
I mean, I think it's just such a beautiful opportunity to change the way things function in our society. Um, I just think I'm not saying, and we're not saying at all, that we think transit needs to be prioritized over other social changes that need to happen. For example, raising income assistance rates and disability rates is absolutely critically needed. Housing as a human right, critically needed. All kinds of changes do need to be made that actually are not complex at all and are extremely important and urgent, and not hard to figure out in any way. But the transit piece is just, it's so exciting because it's something that a lot of people wouldn't necessarily think of, because we've become so entrenched in paying fares, and fares are so normalized. But when you think about what it would mean if they went away, it's just so beautiful. Like, people are so smart. That's something I saw when I was working with people in extreme poverty, was people just doing such hard work to take care of themselves and to take care of other people, using almost nothing and working so hard. If you give people freedom of movement, I trust that they will go where they need to go, and we will see such amazing benefits from that very quickly. That's why it became a focus for me and for some other members of the group. Everyone has their own motivations. Some of us are really motivated by the harms of personal vehicles and wanting to reduce the number of trips in personal vehicles. Me as a social worker, I had that lived experience of being for a certain period of time, I worked at Our Place. It was for a pretty short time, but I worked at Our Place for a time as an outreach worker there, and I was the one handing out the bus tickets a few of those days in the morning. And all the people who came to me had very important, really urgent things they needed to do, reasons they needed those bus tickets, and the bus tickets ran out every day immediately. And I was just disgusted with how cruel and inefficient it is that we would exclude someone from going to see their doctor, from going to access food, from going to see their family member when we have the capacity to do it. It's better for them to go do those things, but as is true with so many social policies, it's actually more efficient and cheaper to not deprive people of the things that they need. Like, if you meet people's needs up front, it's simpler and cheaper for everyone. And that shouldn't be our motivator. That should never be the main thing we're motivated by, but it is true. It is the truth.
No, I think that's a great point, and you're right. The fiscal consideration should never be a prime motivator. But I have spent a lot of my life involved in abolitionist movements and decarceration movements, and one of the things I would always try to communicate to people was mass incarceration, even if you don't object to it for its human rights violations,
Mhm.
mass incarceration, over policing, carceral systems are the most expensive solution. The most expensive way to do things is the way we're doing it. And so it's
Yeah.
really interesting to hear you talk about that in the context of transit, how actually maybe making transit free would in the long run be cheaper for the average Canadian taxpayer, not more expensive.
That's our belief, and we believe that there's, evidence to support that from places that have already tried, implementing these things. Like in Montreal, they made transit free for seniors. And our call for the provincial government is, because we understand it would take time to scale things up. We want them to start by immediately eliminating fares for youth and for seniors in BC.
And how
Um,
how are you defining youth and seniors?
So youth, it would be 18. I mean, I would love it if they made it to be 25 and under, just as many people as possible. But because we have to choose a number, we're saying 18 and under for the youth and 65 and older for the seniors, just to do that immediately. And they did eliminate fares for seniors in Montreal, and ridership went up by 15 to 20%. So if you think about what that means, like each of those rides is someone who is older doing something for themselves, for their community, going to see people in their family. Social isolation is so dangerous for physical and mental health. And we believe that if we really create freedom of movement by eliminating fares, that in the healthcare system is one of the areas where we would see the biggest um, savings and the biggest kind of lifting of some of the burden on that system, which would save provincial dollars, which is why we're kind of pushing the province to be the ones to do this.
On that note, one of the resources you directed me to before our interview, which everybody should go out and read, is Mark Lee's Tyee article on why BC should make public transit free. One of the things I learned from reading that article, thank you for the recommendation, by the way, is how mind-bogglingly expensive it is for provincial and federal governments to maintain the car-based infrastructure.
Yes.
It's not like our highways and roads are free
No.
or asking the governments to find a new pot of money to invest in free mass transit. We're actually spending an incredible amount of money to maintain this absence of mass transit and
Yeah.
instead maintain this really intricate and, environmentally death dealing automotive culture.
For sure. Yeah, the shift we need to make, a huge part of it is just a cultural shift and talking to each other about, "Oh, yeah, so do you believe that cars are free and neutral for society? Okay, well, we need to talk about that because 'cause they're not." Yeah. They we would save so much money in the infrastructure area, and then the cost of congestion too, the huge cost to society, for quality of life, but also for, um yeah, human health and for, dollars in the economy, apparently. It's not my specialty, but Mark Lee gets into it. Um, the congestion is so expensive, and there's no reason we need to be continuing like this. Like, there is a better way, and we need to see leadership, and, um, we're gonna have to force them to change it, though. That's the impression we're getting, and that's the truth for a lot of things, but,
I was going to
um
ask you how's it going in the BC legislature with your efforts?
yeah, so we're still a fairly new organization. Um, we have been somewhat disappointed at times to hear certain people within the transit space in the provincial government suggest that maybe municipalities should take the lead on this,
I.e.,
which
that
is
they don't want to pay the bill, so
yeah,
go
they want
convince Victoria City
municipalities
Council to pay for it.
they want each separate municipal council to find money to make transit free for youth and seniors, which is ridiculous. It's a huge failure on their part to actually meet their responsibilities, which is to govern the province in a way that meets the needs of the people of the province and follows the evidence and makes the most sense. And it's totally inefficient and it's not equitable because certain municipalities don't have the money. We were at Oak Bay municipal council meetings when they were considering trying to find the money to do the youth passes in the city of Victoria, people 18 and under, they can get a free pass for the bus from City Hall, and the city of Victoria pays for that. My understanding is, largely through parking revenue, and it's an amazing program, and we're so glad that they've done it, because it's really showing us what should be happening elsewhere in the province. But it's really tough for the youth who are just over the border in Oak Bay or just over the border into Saanich or into Esquimalt because they do not have access to that. So when they turn 13, they have to start paying for the bus. And we've heard anecdotally from bus drivers that a lot of youth who are clearly not 12 get on the bus and say that they're 12. And that is just heartbreaking to me. You know, I had anxiety when I was a teenager. I would have just not gone. If I didn't have the money to take the bus, I wouldn't have tried to lie about my age. I would have become more isolated and I wouldn't have gone. And that's not what we want. How dare we make a society that does that to kids? We have no right to run a society in that kind of unfair way. Yeah. The youth are amazing. There's a group called Transit for Teens, and they have been advocating for the province to eliminate fares for all teenagers. They've been doing that work for a while, and they are so passionate. I'm just like I have so much hope seeing their work because they feel it so deeply how unfair it is that some of the teens in this region get to ride the bus for free and others do not. And they are not gonna let it go, so I hope we can get it to be fixed right away.
Speaking of the bus drivers, what is the perspective of the actual workers, the bus drivers, the mechanics, the people who staff BC Transit, not the upper echelon management, but the actual workforce? How does the transit union, how are your relationships with them? And are they on board with the mission? Do they have concerns?
Mhm. Well, we're very, very proud and fortunate to be endorsed by the, Unifor local representing the Victoria bus drivers, and we take that relationship very seriously. So we had a special event for springtime, and we invited the transit workers to come and members of the union leadership and also, the workers in those units, and we're very, very passionate about the need for the drivers and the service users to communicate and work together and push for change together. What we've heard from the folks who we're close with in the union and over there, um, the drivers and the other workers, is that it's a diverse group of people. So I mean, for sure, there are folks there who would say, no, we shouldn't eliminate fares. But overall, the reception we've received has been really great, and we're really excited about how many of the drivers and other workers are in favor of making this change. It's not actually a stable way to collect the funding for transit. It's not stable, it's not reliable. With the COVID pandemic, the ridership suddenly went down, and that really affected how the transit systems they're still, like, trying to recover, the transit systems from that big change. If you were funding it in a more stable way, that wouldn't have gone down like that, and they deserve to have stable, secure work that is excellent, and then we can have excellent service. They go together. I'm really passionate about moral distress. That's something I think about a lot as a social worker, partly because I experienced almost like life-threatening levels of moral distress when I was a shelter worker. Moral distress is that feeling like this is wrong. This is wrong. I'm being made to see or participate in something that's wrong. The people in charge are not fixing it. I can't fix it. And I just can't imagine being that in that position of being a driver and seeing those teenagers try to slink onto the bus and then knowing some of them can't afford it. Like, I've heard from a driver, feeling so sad seeing a family get on the bus and have to pay the fares and knowing they're going grocery shopping and thinking about how much money they just spent that they can't use for their groceries. It's not actually safe. Moral distress is a workplace hazard. And, we don't think it's right that the driver should be having to deal with fares at all. One other issue is that it also leads to conflict at times
Yeah.
with people who are in a desperate position and they're really wanting to get on the bus because maybe they really have to. And then the drivers have been it's very complex because BC Transit for a while was telling them not to enforce the fares, that they should inform people of the fares, but that's gonna be an antagonistic conversation either way. It's not safe. They did a pilot in New York City where they, made some of the buses free, and assaults against the drivers went down by 40%. So, it's safer for the drivers, it's safer for the users. We can't be doing the fares anymore, it's just not working.
Liz, I know you're not a historian, you're not a sociologist, so I apologize, but I would like your opinion because you're deeply read and experienced on this issue, obviously, and very passionate about it. Our addiction to car culture and our resistance and even outright hostility to mass transit is relatively recent. I mean, in Canada, in Europe, in Asia, there were really well developed mass transit systems, which maybe weren't free, but they were certainly cheaper and more accessible than they are now. Why do you think, and here's the part where I apologize for asking this question, knowing it's not your specialty, What do you think accounts I understand the economics of it. What do you think accounts for the mass psychology of it? People's refusal to give up their addiction on car culture, their addiction to car culture, because again, it's not a historically long-lived phenomenon. It's very recent, so it's not like this is
Mhm.
in our cultural DNA or anything.
Mhm. I'm so glad you brought this up. There was such a good IMAX movie at the IMAX in Victoria at the museum, called The Trolley. So if anyone gets a chance, I know that they take away the IMAX movies and then they bring them back for little runs. If there's any way anyone listening can find another showing of The Trolley, I think that you can also watch it online, and I think one of the names it goes by online is The Trolley That Saved the World or something. It's such a cute documentary. It's very emotional. Um, and yeah, there's this really horrific part of the movie that's so depressing where they talk about the very deliberate, like, murder of the trolley systems essentially by, people invested in making money from personal vehicles,
Car
where
manufacturers.
yeah, car manufacturers and other folks involved in that industry, that world, they purchased trolley systems in bad faith, and they ripped them up, and they burned and destroyed the trolleys. It's definitely something that has been done deliberately so that we can be, maximally harvested for cash under capitalism. Like, it's just and the whole individualist, um, way of living and thinking that we've been having crammed down our throats for so long is all about that, and it's the same when it comes to the personal vehicles. I think that there is right now I see in BC in particular, a really concerning moment where people are feeling that moral distress. They're seeing a lot of extreme poverty. And there is this really disturbing thing that's happening where there's talk about kind of an escalating, punishment-driven response, which BC Transit is also engaged in. We did, some press, like, I think it was 2 weeks ago now, about, about how BC Transit is about to start what they're calling a fair education and enforcement program here in Victoria, boarding buses, talking to people about their fares, possibly escalating to more enforcement measures in the future, asking people to leave buses, etcetera. Um, we're talking about more, forced treatment for substance use challenges, despite the fact that many social workers and others have pointed out that there just are not enough voluntary options and that, housing and other issues are kind of more central to that. I I think that we are at a moment where we must speak with each other about how it is not actually possible to shut other people in society out and make yourself and your family safe. There's a lot of talk that's in that kind of in that vein right now. And the car, I think, kind of represents that. You get in your car, you lock your doors, and there's that feeling like I can make myself safe. I can make my family safe. And it feels good in a way. That is not how society works. That is not how safety works. We cannot be safe until we're all safe. And I think that's what transit represents and making transit truly excellent and accessible to everyone. It's a different way of thinking about safety, that safety is collective, and that's the only way it can actually be. If you think you can lock your family in your personal vehicle and drive down the street and it's not going to hurt your child to see someone suffering outside that window, I'm sorry, but that's not the case. The only way is to make everyone safe.
And that's really interesting when I think about that in the context of your earlier comments about the economic motivation behind the destruction of the trolley and mass transit. Yet again, we discover another way that the capitalist makes money by falsely exploiting that sense of security. I'm going to sell you a car which you think is going to help make you feel safe. I know it's not at the end of the day going to make you safe. And in fact, it might make you less safe because your chances of dying in a car accident are so much greater than your chances of dying in a bus or a train accident. So I'm going to directly profit from that false sense of security.
Yeah, yeah. It's pretty blatant, and then when you take into account, like, the environmental stuff connected to personal vehicles, it's actively making the kids in the back seat less safe. Yeah, and I have kids in my life right now. I'm not, a mom, but I'm a auntie who lives in the house, they call me. So I'm actively engaging in raising some little people right now, and I just love taking the bus with them. They love the bus. They love to sit and feel proud to sit in the seat themselves. They love to connect with other people on the bus and see out the window what's going on. And it's just such a beautiful way to travel with kids, and they deserve for it to be um, just amazing and excellent, and not to have to see people getting in altercations about whether they can get on. My sister was actually it was really upsetting for me to hear. She was stranded without bus fare at one point in Oak Bay because, there was an issue with her bike. Her cargo bike broke down, and she didn't have the cash to get on the bus, and that driver chose to refuse to allow her to get on the bus with 2 children, like, under 5 years old. She literally was holding a baby. So, I'm sorry, but if that is how things are gonna go down, and it is, and much worse things than that are happening too out there connected to this, we can't afford to keep going this way. The fares need to be eliminated.
Why? So, bear with me. I need to lay some groundwork for this question. So, Donald Trump calls up Mark Carney and says whatever he says. And Mark Carney comes out the next day and he says, well, we've decided that Trump is correct when it comes to investing in national defense. So we are going to raise defense investment by $9 billion in fiscal year 2025-26, uh,
Mhm,
bringing Canadian defense spending up to 2.2% of domestic gross product. It's already close to $30 billion. And now Carney is going to hike it to $40 billion.
mhm,
Nobody bats an eye.
mhm,
Nobody asks, wait a second, why can you find an
mhm,
additional $10 billion over the course of 24 hours to add to the, $30 billion a year you've already found for
mhm,
guns and bombs and bullets and blood,
mhm,
and yet you can't find, millions, hundreds of thousands even for free transit programs in different municipalities. What I'm not asking you why Mark Carney does what he does. I think you can't become Prime Minister of Canada or President of the United States or, you know, Prime Minister of India without being a fundamentally morally bankrupt person. Why do you think it is so easy for the voting public, the people who take mass transit, to swallow that?
mhm.
Why do you think more people don't say, "Wait a second, if we can spend 9 billion more on the military, why can't we spend 9 million more on mass transit?"
Mhm. We've Yeah, it is shocking and disturbing, and that's where I think the other piece of our mission as the Transit Riders Union is so important. It's always been really important to our chair, Christina, and the other members of the organizing committee that one of the things that we're doing is trying to build a community in Victoria of transit users. We must be connected in community to each other so that we feel strong enough to question what politicians are doing, so that we feel strong enough to be informed and feel like there's hope or anything we can do to influence what they do and to say no. Um,
What do these
so
politicians say? And I'm not asking you to name
Mhm,
names. I don't want you to burn any bridges. They know. The premier knows. He knows it's ridiculous that you can find 9 billion for defense, but you can't find 9 million for transit.
mhm,
Behind closed doors, do they even pretend to be aware of this immoral contradiction, even
mhm.
though they fundamentally see it and see the immorality behind it? Does that ever come up at all in any of your discussions?
Yeah, well, we have certain members who are more invested in lobbying government and certain members who are less invested in that and more thinking, "We just have to build a mass movement. We have to connect, we have to organize." I kind of come from the camp where I think we have to do both, and it's really good that we have people who like to do, engaging with government to try to explain to them, "Hey, we're gonna try to make you do this." We're not saying, "Hey, please, can you do this?" We're saying, "This needs to happen. We are demanding that you fix this for the people who you serve. If you don't, we want you to know we will continue to pressure you and do everything we can to make you do this." Um, yeah, and then there's other folks who don't wanna be in those meetings, and they find it really gross for some of the reasons you just described, and maybe they're more involved in organizing some of our events and connecting with people on the ground. And we need people who are doing all of those things. Um, People, I think, have been trained that we are not smart, we're not informed. "Oh, you don't know," like, "Oh, it's so complex. It's so complex. You don't understand why we need that defense funding. Just trust us. You keep go toiling away." And then also the working and poor people are having to work harder and harder to survive, and we have less and less energy to use for advocacy. So we're very aware of that, that there are a lot of folks who would maybe wanna do this kind of thing, but the moral distress is too much, and then they're working 2 jobs or whatever. All of us who have any energy at all to use to connect with each other and to build movements for change, we strongly believe we need to do that, and that this is a really pivotal moment for that. In BC and in Victoria, and also, like, around the world. Yeah.
I think that's a great point to start wrapping up the interview on. If you are one of those people listening who, is having trouble making ends meet, has kids to worry about, but at the same time, just listened to this interview and said, yes, Liz, Victoria Transit Riders Union, yes, 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 I'd like to help. I'd like to play a role. What is the easiest way, or maybe what's the path of least resistance for somebody to get involved in this movement, especially if they have a million other things going on in their lives?
Yeah, we have a mailing list. Folks can get in touch with us and sign up for the mailing list. I'm just gonna make sure I actually know the proper URL here for our I think it's victoriatransitridersunion.com, but I'm just gonna check on that. Um, and if people wanna sign up for the mailing list, we'll keep people informed about options. Yeah, it's victoriatransitridersunion.com. There's an option on there. People can write a letter to the minister. We have a letter right now that's live, demanding, that the minister in BC here eliminate transit fares for teens
Mhm.
across the province. We're gonna try to get something up quite soon that also includes the seniors. That's kind of our ask right now is eliminate transit fares for seniors and for youth in the province, and immediately start to prepare to eliminate fares for everyone, because that's where you see the best benefits as far as people having freedom of movement, as far as not wasting money policing fares, wasting money on the fare box, on all of that infrastructure, and wasting the time and energy of the drivers on policing fares. They have such complex, important work. Their work actually is complex. Driving a bus downtown, that actually is complex. It's
That is
high
a
stakes.
stressful, complicated job.
Yeah, it's high stakes, it's stressful. We need them to be able to actually really focus on doing that, on the safety of people outside the bus and in the bus, not on policing fares. Yeah, but we're collecting folks on our mailing list to stay in touch with, and we're gonna be having events. There's gonna be an event, in the fall that we're co-hosting with the, teachers union, because many of the teachers are very passionate about this issue, for, the future of their students, and also for their students to be able to have equitable access to transit. Um, we're gonna continue to host events, and, sometimes we have spaces on the organizing committee too, if people wanna join us and try to become more involved than being a general member of the Transit Writers Union. Yeah, we would love to connect with as many people in the region as possible. We've been doing a survey about people's priorities on transit and things that they've noticed. Um, yeah, we'd love to reach out to us. We'd love to get connected.
As much as I love buses, they do have a limited capacity. Do we have any hope for expanded rail, light rail, anything that is a system of larger capacity and maybe a lot easier on the environment?
Oh, people in this region have their eyes on that for sure. If the Trolley movie has taught me anything, it's that we always must have hope. We must have hope. And, yeah, light rail and those kinds of solutions are being taken up all around the world. And I don't see why we shouldn't have, systems like that in any city. They're so efficient. They are so beautiful in ways that can only be fully appreciated if you watch the Trolley movie. But, yeah, no,
I'm gonna find it. I'm gonna
we're all
find it
about
and
that.
link it on on the show
Oh,
notes.
yeah, definitely. Yeah, no, we're all about the rail as much as we can get into that. That would be fantastic.
That's
Yeah.
great. Any final thoughts, final advice for our listeners?
Oh, yeah. I mean, so I haven't talked about this much this time, but I just wanna say, doing work for social change, it just has this beautiful way of inspiring other people. One of the ways that we got inspired as a group, and one of the people who's helped us know how to take some of these actions and has also done work within his space, is this municipal councillor Teal Phelps Bondaroff, who's in Saanich. He was the one who brought this resolution of making transit free for youth. He brought it to the Union of BC Municipalities, and they endorsed that. So that's something I forgot to mention earlier. The municipalities in BC have officially asked the province to make transit fares go away for youth. Um, Teal ran an amazing campaign before his work on this about eliminating the cost of contraception at the point of use in BC. And I don't know if you're aware of this, but that went through.
Mhm.
And he helped show us, like, hey, this is how you write a press release. You can do this. This is how you connect. And I just want people to know you can write press releases. You can invite the media to talk to you. You can stand up and use your voice. This is not too complex. These issues we're facing in a society, they're not too complex for everyday people to speak out about. People on the ground, we know what needs to happen. We must organize with each other. We must build our capacity and we must push back. And we can. And it makes a difference.
Liz, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time and attention. Liz Cronin has been speaking with us today. She is on the organizing committee of the Victoria Transit Riders Union. They got a great website, victoriatransitridersunion.com. They are also on Instagram, and we'll link all of that as well as the trolley movie in our show notes. Liz, thank you so much for taking the time to appear on Seeds of Revolution. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Joel, and thanks for all the work you're doing.
Jesus Christ came
Anytime.
back
Take care.
today, like you threatened he will. Which poor group of people do you think that he would kill? And who would Jesus choose to starve if you gave him the chance? And if there was a genocide, would he take a neutral stance? Who would Jesus bomb? Tell me, who would Jesus bomb? Would it be kids in Palestine, or how about Vietnam? Would Jesus bomb the atheists, the Muslims, or the Jews? I want you to ask yourself, well, what would Jesus do? I want you to ask yourself, well, what would Jesus do? Would he say it's complicated and there's sinners on both sides? Would he say that some people, they just deserve to die? If Jesus Christ rose from the dead and on a sidewalk slept, would you extend your hand to him or just watch where you stepped? Who would Jesus bomb? Tell me, who would Jesus bomb? Would it be kids in Palestine, or how about Vietnam? Would Jesus bomb the atheists, the Muslims, or the Jews? I want you to ask yourself, well, what would Jesus do? I want you to ask yourself, well, what would Jesus do? Would Jesus hate the gay folk, the queer folk, or the trans? Would he suggest they end their lives according to God's plans? Jesus tell a homeless man to get a fucking job, or turn his back on the poor? Would Jesus be a snob? Who would Jesus bomb? Tell me, who would Jesus bomb? Would it be kids in Palestine, or how about Vietnam? Would Jesus bomb the atheists, the Muslims, or the Jews? I want you to ask yourself, well, what would Jesus do? I want you to ask yourself, well, what would Jesus do? Would Jesus build a border wall? Would Jesus drive a tank? Would Jesus be a landlord? Would Jesus run a bank? Would Jesus Christ feel safe in his skin if he came to your town? And would you still believe in him if you found out he was brown? Who would Jesus bomb? Tell me, who would Jesus bomb? Would it be kids in Palestine, or how about Vietnam? I want you to ask yourself, well,